The war in Ukraine, which began with Russia's invasion in February 2022, arguably began with Russia's annexation of the Crimea in 2014, has now extended beyond Ukraine's borders into Russia, with Ukrainian forces making incursions into the Kursk region, and this development signifies a significant shift in the conflict's dynamics, demonstrating Ukraine's increased boldness and capability to strike within Russian territory, and the situation remains complex. Both sides engaged in a fierce, evolving battle. And the current state of the conflict, the implications of the Ukrainian operation in the Kursk region, the perspectives from both Ukrainian and Russian sources suggest a level of confusion, but also a reluctant admiration even being expressed in the Russian press. Zelensky's recent acknowledgement today of that Ukrainian forces have indeed been operating in Russia's Kursk region is a turning point in the conflict. Previously, Kyiv has been reticent about operations on Russian soil to maintain the moral high ground, perhaps, and avoid escalating international tensions. However, the current incursion seems to be part of a broader strategy by Ukraine to bring the war into Russian territory and thereby shift the pressure back onto the aggressor. Zelensky himself emphasized this point, saying that Ukraine is proving that it really can bring justice by applying the necessary pressure to Russia to deter its continued aggression in Ukraine. The Ukrainian strategy appears to be twofold, therefore. Firstly, to disrupt Russian military operations and logistics close to their border, and secondly, to send a clear message that Ukraine is capable of striking back into Russian territory. This bold move underscores Ukraine's resilience and adaptability in the face of a protracted conflict. On the Russian side, the incursion has been met with a mix of alarm, propaganda. The Russian government has ordered the evacuation of tens of thousands of civilians from the affected areas, a move that highlights the seriousness with which they were treating the Ukrainian advance. And Russian state media, including outlets like TASS, have emphasized the scale of the evacuation, the threat posed by the attack, and an attempt to rally domestic support for the ongoing war. But Russia's defense ministry has claimed to have prevented further Ukrainian advance, with fighting reportedly taking place in villages close to the border. And the FSB's imposition of a counter-terrorism regime across several regions, including Kursk, indicates the extent of the internal security concerns raised by this incursion. Moreover, the Russian narrative includes accusations against Ukraine for posing a threat to the Kursk nuclear power station, though there has been no independent verification of this claim. The Russian government's portrayal of the conflict in Kursk is designed to solidify the narrative of Ukraine as a terrorist state, thereby justifying Russia's military actions. But this rhetoric may also reflect genuine concern within the Russian leadership about the potential for Ukrainian forces to destabilize regions far from the current front line. And as I say, the Russian newspaper sources actually grudgingly recognize and admire the skill of the Ukrainian forces. They recognize that Ukraine is strong. The humanitarian toll of this conflict continues to mount on both sides. In Kyiv, a Russian bombardment recently killed a 35-year-old man and his 4-year-old son, highlighting the ongoing suffering of Ukrainian civilians at the hands of Putin's missiles. And such attacks serve as stark reminders of the war's devastating impact on ordinary people, and they continue to fuel Ukrainian resolve to resist Russian aggression. Conversely, the Ukrainian drone strikes on Russian cities like Lipetsk and the missile strikes that have caused injuries in the Kursk region have brought the war home to Russian civilians, who have largely been insulated from the direct effect of this conflict. The increasing frequency of these attacks raises the stakes and risks escalating the conflict into a broader confrontation, potentially involving other regional actors like Belarus, which has already increased its military presence along the border with Ukraine. The Ukrainian incursion into the Kursk region is possibly an attempt to relieve pressure on other fronts. Reports indicate that a reduction in combat engagements in other parts of Ukraine has been a result of this invasion, and it appears that the Kursk operation is diverting Russian resources and attention as a result. It could allow Ukraine to regroup and strengthen its defences in areas where Russian forces have been advances. But of course, what this does is mark a turning in the war, where Ukraine is no longer purely a defensive operation. It's now engaged in offensive operations. It raises questions about the future trajectory of the war. If Ukraine continues to strike within Russia, it may provoke harsher responses from Moscow, potentially leading to a dangerous escalation. On the other hand, sustained Ukrainian operations within Russia could weaken Russian morale and undermine the Kremlin's narrative of an invincible Russian military. And Russia is running out of weapons. It's losing more tanks per month than it actually has the ability to build, even if it has a huge stockpile of tanks already. The war in Ukraine is entering this new phase, therefore, with Ukrainian forces demonstrating a capability to conduct operations within Russian territory which was not expected. This shift has significant implications for the conflict's progression, potentially altering strategic calculations on both sides. While Ukraine's bold actions may bolster its position today, it may also carry the risk of significant escalation tomorrow, particularly if Russia feels compelled to respond with greater force. So it's crucial to look at this situation with both sides, to check the Telegram accounts from both sides. Telegram is really the only way to monitor what Russia is thinking today, and to listen to what people are saying. Zelensky says Ukraine is proving that it can bring justice and guarantees exactly that kind of pressure that is needed, pressure on the aggressor. The Russian Military Defense Ministry says we prevented Ukraine from advancing further on the 5th day of their attack into Kursk. Alexei Smirnov, the acting governor of Kursk, says more than 76,000 people have been temporarily relocated to safe places. This is not an insignificant event. This is a strategic and a moral turning point in this war.